Can't hear you. I can see you talking, but I can't hear you.
Thank you for pointing that
There
out.
we go.
I was just saying that we're going to get started momentarily, but the people that are joining, because people are rapidly joining right now, if you can just put in where you're dialing from in the chat box, it would just be great to know where people are dialing in from.
So wait, should I put it in now?
I mean, if you want to, sure, why not? I mean, we can just talk about it because everyone hears us right now. So I'm dialing in from New Jersey, from Fort Lee, from our office in Fort Lee, New Jersey. And where are you?
Well, I'm in Berlin right now, in Berlin, Germany.
Awesome. What's the time difference?
So I think it's 6 hours. So it's 8 p.m. over here. So it's the evening shift that I'm doing right here.
All right. Well, thanks for joining.
Well, sure. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
This is going to be awesome.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. I think PPC is probably the most interesting topic currently on Amazon, and likely I think also it's going to be the most interesting one for the next month. So I think it's great that we have this webinar together.
Oh yeah, I think for the next year or two, it'll be an interesting environment with PPC on Amazon.
Well, yeah, it's. I was actually I was very excited when I saw your tweet last week. When you announced that headline searches were becoming available for sellers. So I know we're all waiting for this moment to come, but it's good to see that there's some progress finally happening on that side.
Oh yeah, and we'll talk a lot about that in our webinar today.
So do you have any idea about when product display ads might be available for sellers? Is it also shortly, or is it delayed?
I have no idea with product display ads. I mean, headline ads is a big one. People have been waiting for that for a while.
Oh yeah.
It's still in beta, and we'll talk. Hopefully, it'll come up on our webinar today. But it's still in beta, and I don't think every client has it right now.
Yeah, so for sure, international sellers, they don't have it. This I know, but so in the US, I don't know how evenly it's distributed, whether it's made available to everyone or not. I mean, based on the way Amazon does it, typically, it's not available to everyone at one point. It just gets rolled out gradually. So I wouldn't be surprised to see only a few sellers having access to it right now.
Yeah, but yeah, we've been doing headline ads for 4 or 5 years now, I want to say.
4 or 5 years, yeah. Oh, for your vendor customers, then I guess.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I think we'll talk more about the saturation of PPC on this webinar, but I still think that there's a lot less penetration and saturation of headline ads versus sponsored ads.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's given that in general, I'd say that vendors, they're not as sophisticated on Amazon as sellers are, and so given that headline searches have been available only to vendors, I think it's very obvious that it's right. The opportunity is massive, but what's going to be interesting is to see how quickly CPCs are going to rise once headline searches become available to anyone.
Oh yeah. That's what Amazon wants, right? It's funny. It's funny that you said that vendors are less sophisticated than sellers.
Well, I mean, at least that's my perception. I talk to many vendors over here in Europe specifically, and what I see is so either they have an agency, then the agency is very sophisticated. Or if they don't have an agency, then typically, they're not too sophisticated with regard to Amazon. That's my impression.
So right now, everyone's chatting, saying they don't actually see us or hear us.
Okay.
So they can't see. Just hanging chat. Oh, they do see us. Can't see anything, Nikhil. Can't see anything. No. Okay, so let's just do it without.
So maybe it starts at 8 sharp, or do you need to put it live or?
Yes, yeah. I'm gonna have to get yours off. All right. Should I turn it off, turn it back on?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
how there. Just sign off yours.
I am.
Says presenter has lost connection.
Yeah, that's you. You're the presenter.
I'm going to turn off my Wi-Fi. Should we end the call and then restart it?
Let's turn your Wi-Fi on. I mean, everything on our end is saying that we're fine.
Right. I'm going to end it and restart it.
Yeah.
Should I end it or no?
Yeah.
So end the event or just log out?
I don't know.
I think if you end it, then people might, they might get kicked out. So I don't know. I think if you just log out and log in again.
Can you do that?
Oh, there. Now it's it. I hear something. There it is. It's working now. It's good. So it looks like people are seeing us now.
Perfect. All right, they can see us.
Ouch.
My microphone's off.
All right. So it looks like we lost Chad here. Oh, there he is again. I can't hear you, Chad. I'm sorry. Nope, still can't hear you.
All right, got it.
There we go.
Looks like it's working now.
Perfect.
All right, so we're about 4 after already. We have a lot to cover today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Chad Rubin from Skubana. I'm joined here today with Franz from Sellics.
Hi, guys.
So today we're going to talk about everything around sponsored ads and PPC. Certainly, Franz is a lot more invested in the PPC ecosystem than I am, but we both wanted to join and collaborate on the call today to share valuable gold nuggets. So let's start this up. If you want someone to actually join today, please give them the link down below on the screen. If you want to shoot us on Instagram or Twitter, please use the hashtag in the bottom left-hand corner. There is some delay. So just let you guys know that we're using YouTube Live. There's about a 3 or 4 minute delay. And so please feel free to use the chat box. So time for headphones. Looks like someone wants me to use headphones. Okay. Hold on. It's coming. All right. Anybody else have anything cranky to talk about in the chat box? Please feel free. Alex, are we good? Leanne, you guys hear us? Steven? All right. So before we get started, I wanted to quickly get a poll of everyone on the call today. So I'm going to pop open. This is the first time we've done this poll. So let's see how this works. Bam, I'm going to start it. And we're going to make the results public at the end of the poll just to see who's on the call today. So if you look on your chat in the right-hand side, we're asking the question, what is your average ACoS? If you're not using any sponsored ads, please opt out and just say, hey, I'm not using sponsored ads today. Hopefully this webinar will encourage you to change that. So right now it's like 11 to 20% is in the lead. Franz, do you see that on your end as well?
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting. Actually, I was expecting higher, to be honest. So
is I, actually.
Pretty good. But we also have a quarter, 25% that have 40% plus. So that's certainly
a lot.
Yeah. Hard to make that profitable, I guess.
Let's give it a few more moments. Whoever's doing 1 to 10%, you see that you're not spending enough money, or you're managing your bids super tightly. So kudos to you. All right. So I think that gives us a good idea of who's on the call today. Very fascinating stuff. So let's move on. By the way, I'm dialing in from New Jersey. If you want to share where you're dialing in from, Franz is dialing in from
Berlin, Germany.
Berlin. Awesome. So now they're saying they can't hear us. Oh, no, yep, all good now. All good. Okay, great. There's a little bit of a delay. So to get started, are we sharing that screen right here? It's not switching. I can actually do it from mine if you want. Let me share my screen. All right. So right now in 2017, in my opinion, the only way to win is to spend on Amazon. And so the best way to get traction on a product right now within the guidelines and the terms of service of Amazon is to pay to play. What do you think about that, Franz? I would love this to be interactive. So,
yeah, well, so I mean, for sure, if you compare it to the past 2 years or so, it's definitely but just doing the on-page stuff, just doing the organic optimization, researching keywords and so on, I think it's definitely not enough because everyone is doing it. So, you always need to have you always need to have a certain edge over competitors, and I think that PPC is certainly the next thing. So I know that also a lot of sellers, they're looking into kind of, influencer marketing, external traffic, this kind of stuff. But I feel that, it's a lot easier to get started with sponsored products compared to, influencer marketing and this kind of stuff.
Yep, I completely agree. And the perfect client to Amazon is someone that finds either a headline ad or a sponsored ad. Then it's FBA in the buy box. So they get paid on the FBA, and then they get their commission fees on top of it. So it's this holy triangle. That's really Amazon's core client, and that's what they're going to try to push everyone towards.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they put so much effort in just bringing everyone to onboard on sponsored products, and once they're onboarded, they put a lot of effort in keeping them spend money on sponsored products. So but I think they do a good job. If I talk to sellers today, and if I compare it to a year ago, it's like 90%, 95% of sellers actually using sponsored products. So looks like Amazon was quite successful in doing so.
Oh yeah, it now represents about $1 billion on their P&L.
Yeah, I saw that. Very fascinating. Usually they never share any data, but then $1 million in ad spend, that's significant.
All right, so a little bit about myself. This is not about myself or Franz today. We're really here to drop value, but what gives us the ability to drop value is that we've been doing it for a very long time. So I'm Chad Rubin. I'm the CEO of Skubana. Some on the streets, they call me e-commerce renegade. You can find me on my social handles all over with ecom renegade. And I've been a seller on Amazon for 10 years now. So I've been through the ups and downs. And even when Amazon was the wild, wild, wild west, now it's just the wild west. But I've been through the grind on Amazon before it got to the point of being hyper competitive the way it is today. Franz?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Franz, founder and CEO of Sellics. Sellics is actually a German company, so I'm German myself. Most of the guys on my team are German as well. So we're based in Germany. We started almost 3 years ago. I think we've been one of the very first Amazon software companies out there. And so today, we have a global audience. So, we have many American sellers, but also European sellers. So, I think it's certainly interesting to have this European perspective as well. And obviously, you can feel free to reach out to me, Twitter, Facebook, email, whatever suits you best.
Awesome. All right. So today we're going to talk about how to explode your Amazon profits with Amazon sponsored PPC ads. If you really want to learn how to lower your ACoS or how to even look at the structuring of your campaigns, you're in the right spot. Certainly Sellics and Franz has a lot of experience doing this. I'm also happen to be a user of Sellics as well as a customer. And so I think that's really what made this a great and compelling webinar to do together, is that I'm actually a user of the software for my own business. We have a lot of customers that are actually using Skubana and Sellics together. And so you're in the right place if you want
those top 3 bullet points, and in general, if you're just an awesome person. At the end of this presentation, we're going to have an offer, so stick around. It's only going to be available to those that are actually watching this live on the webinar today. So please feel free to stick around for the end. You're not going to want to miss it. So Amazon PPC, just for basics and for starters, the left-hand side and the bottom are the sponsored products. So this is Amazon sponsored ads. This is available to third-party sellers on Seller Central. And the top, the headline ads and product display ads have been really notoriously only available to vendors. So the headline ads at the top are found when you actually search products, and you need to have a grouping of more to actually advertise the headline ads. I've been leveraging headline ads for quite a period of time, and I suggest those that aren't using it on the call today, check it out. Amazon just started beta testing headline ads. Maybe I think last week I posted on LinkedIn about it. And product display ads are served right below the buy box. So it's a great way to actually get some traction and visibility on competitor listings.
Do you see any performance differences? Like, what would you say is the best performing type of ad?
Best performing ads. So I would say sponsor ads are great. You take up a lot more real estate space, both on the right-hand side on that banner and also in the main area when you make the search. But the ones that I like to do what others aren't doing, and so headline ads, really people aren't leveraging them. The average cost of the sale is a lot lower, along with product display ads. And so it's a great place. It's like white opportunity that nobody's playing in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Product display ads, they tend to be a bit tricky. But so for headline ads, I think is currently the golden opportunity. Because there's very little usage, very little coverage, and it's super powerful because it's right at the top. It's even higher. It's even above the sponsored products. Mm-hmm. So it's the most visible ad space you can get on Amazon, right?
Yep. So for me, I'm all about real estate space, and you want to take up as much real estate space as possible.
Yeah. So here, what I did essentially, before we dive into the PPC structure, what we did, and generally what we do at Sellics, when we cover a new topic, we tend to look at the data first, to get an understanding of where are we currently at. Are we at the beginning of the PPC era? Are we in the middle? Are we at the end? And so what we did is we looked at 70 million keywords on Amazon.com. And we were just checking whether there were sponsored products ads showing up on the first page or not, and so what was actually quite interesting to us is to see that for 41% of those 70 million keywords, there were actually ads showing up on page 1. Okay. That sounds a lot because it's like 30 million keywords or so where there are actually ads popping up. But it also shows that, for 60% of keywords, there are currently no ads, right? So that means that those are free keywords where, where you could very easily bid on, and, for certainly a very low CPC, you could actually buy a lot of traffic for it, right? So this is certainly very interesting. However, what we did as well then is that, we split it up by search volume. So if you go to the next slide, you will see that we took all those 70 million keywords and we made six groups out of it. So we grouped them by search volume, and we did the same analysis again. And what we found here is that if you look at the very the important keywords, the one with a very high search volume, you can actually see that the coverage is almost 100%, right? And whereas for the ones with the low search volume, right, so the long tail keywords, there you actually still have a huge opportunity because more than 50% are actually still free. Okay, so that means it is certainly very competitive at the top, but it is also there's still a lot of opportunity in the long tail.
I've always been a big believer in long tail content, not doing going after the high volume keywords that everyone's going after. If you try and find those small niches, and I like to reverse engineer keywords that I come up with, either going through negative reviews, or we'll talk about Sonar coming up, or even using just Amazon's A9 search. It's a great way to come up with long tail keywords to essentially enhance your campaign.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's really the first time that that I'm publicly showing this kind of data here. So I think a lot of people were probably they had a gut feeling that it would be like this, but here we have it. The facts are clear now that it's true that in the long tail there's a huge opportunity. So the question I think for most sellers should be what kind of strategy can you have? How can you take advantage of the current situation as it is, right? So a lot of competition for the big keywords, a lot of free keywords in the long tail. How can you as a seller take advantage of the situation? I think that's a question that most sellers should ask themselves right now.
For sure, I actually wasn't expecting it to look like that, where you have 59% with no ads. But this explains a lot that it's hyper competitive right now. So you need to start finding niche keywords.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what were you expecting?
I knew it was hyper competitive, but I didn't expect 60% to not have ads. But then when you look at this next graph, and you're like, wow, and the high search volume keywords, like we're looking at saturation point. So you need to start digging and uncovering gold, right, in small or keywords that are not as popular or that are unknown or uncovered.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly. I mean, just because there are other people bidding on a certain keyword doesn't mean that you cannot, right? But it certainly means that it's going to be more expensive, right? So, yeah. But so that was just some data up front. Now I think before we dive into I just want to emphasize again, and I don't want to spend time on this, but I think that before you start with sponsored products, you should really make sure that your listing is optimized. Okay. So, make sure your title, your keywords, your bullet points, your images and everything is in place. If you don't know how to do this, then, just Google it. I think there's a ton of content out there available. But really make sure to have an optimized listing. Do you have a threshold, Chad, where you say, you should have a certain number of reviews before you start with sponsored products?
I would say minimum of 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Is necessary, but a lot of people start driving PPC on Amazon without even being FBA. So that's another important thing to note is like make sure your product is FBA, especially if it's not long tail and you're going after high volume search terms. Make sure you're fulfilled by Amazon. Yeah,
so PPC, FBA certainly is a huge plus. I mean, in general, it's just driving conversion like crazy.
Well, yeah, people want to download their order, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So so I think that just for the basics, I think that I want to remind everyone that you should get started. So I personally would agree. I think 3 to 5 reviews, that's certainly a good start. And I hope that, with Amazon's early reviewer program, this is going to be easy to get to those first 3 to 5 reviews very quickly. So, I think if you start without any reviews, you probably see, very, very high ACOS.
Or if someone actually purchases off those high ACOS, just make sure to contact them and ask them like nicely, hey, do you mind just leaving us a review? It'd be so kind of you to let us know what you thought of the product.
Sure. Yeah. So
go ahead.
I'm very curious to see how this entire opt-out thing is going to work out, for the email follow-ups.
Yeah. There's also the old-fashioned way of just literally rolling up your sleeves and contacting people to leave a nice review for you, just out of the kindness of their heart. No barter for any free items or anything. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's for the basics essentially. Before we get started now.
I would say the only thing I would add to that is just make sure you build a listing that's built to sell. And on Skubana Ecommerce TV on our YouTube channel, I have tons of videos on how you should be optimizing your listings. Just make sure they're super optimized before you start spending a ton of money.
Yeah, I love those videos, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I haven't told you, I think, but I've been following them very closely, so that's cool.
Awesome. All right, so let's hit the next slide. So take it away, Franz.
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing that you should do, and I feel that a lot of people are jumping this step, even though it seems so obvious, is to just start by setting the right goals, right? And I think that generally there are 2 types of goals. So if you go to the next slide, there are 2 types of goals for sponsored products. One is to maximize profits, and the other one is to maximize sales, right? So it's rather basic, but I think it has, depending on the goal, this has huge implications on the acres that you're actually aiming for, right? So if you want to maximize for profits, then you should really set a target acres and try to hit your target acres. Whereas if you maximize for sales, then you should rather, you should calculate your break-even acres and then, try to hit this break-even acres, right? So, most strategies, like getting rid of inventory or pushing your organic rankings, specifically at the beginning, this is all maximizing for sales. You just want to sell as many units as you can. Whereas typically later on, when the product is more mature and more established in the market, then you would switch to, to going for profits and try to actually generate a profit with sponsored products, right? So I think, most of the time at the beginning, you would go for sales and then later on you would maximize for profits. Now I know that, specifically in the US, it's super competitive. There are so many people who just, who go for sales. They don't care about the profit at all. For international markets, it's certainly a bit less so. But I think it's just really important to have a very clear idea of what you're looking for when you start selling. And when you start doing PPC.
Yeah, now one of the things I would add to that is just if you're maximizing sales, let's just say you launch a brand new product and you need help getting traction. So that sales will eventually convert into conversions as well, and will boost you up Amazon's search algorithm, which we'll talk about later in the slides as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a typical strategy, right? At the beginning, you just, you go for PPC, but just to generate sales, hoping that this will increase your ranking, hope that this will, give you some extra reviews because they're just more sales or more potential reviewers, right? So that's a very viable strategy at the beginning. I think if you hit a certain point, right? So if your product is then ranking on page 1 or so, then, you might consider, switching or target and then rather optimizing for profits.
Yeah,
right?
Start taking your foot off the gas pedal, start seeing where your ACOS is and start spending less, even though you're having that product on autopilot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's certainly a good point. So yeah, so again, like I said, if you maximize for profits, then, you should look at the target acres. Whereas if you maximize for sales, then you should look at your break-even acres. Now, if you go to the next slide, that's a typical question that I get is, what's a good acres, right? And I think it really depends on what your goal is, right? And also it really depends very, very much on what your product is and, how the cost structure is. Now, I just want to show this here with one example. So, if you say that this is the entire sales, the entire column is kind of the sales price of this product, then typically you have this kind of breakdown, right? You have 25% Amazon fees, so 50% for Amazon fees, and then roughly 10% for FBA fees, right? Mm-hmm. Then you maybe have 35% in cost of goods, maybe a bit less, but let's just assume 35%, and then let's say you have a 10% overhead attribution, right? That you just make for this particular product. That leaves you then with a 30% profit margin. Okay. And so if you go to the next slide, right? Then the break-even acres essentially is your profit margin before PPC spend, right? I mean, that's fairly obvious. If you have 30% left before you spend money on ads, that means that you can spend 30% of the sales price on ads to still break even on that individual sale, right? So I think this is fairly obvious. Now, if you click again, please. If you want to calculate the target acres, that really depends on what target profit margin you are aiming for. So let's say that, before PPC spend, you have a profit margin of 30%. Then, it's really a question of your preference, how much profit you're aiming for after sponsored products. So this is the target profit margin. Now, in this example, I just assumed the 20% target profit margin, which then would leave you with a 10% that you can spend on ads, right? So that means that your target acres is 10%, whereas your break-even acres is 30%. And so I think it's really important for every seller to know, to have those two numbers in mind, because that if your actual acres is lower than your break-even acres, you're not losing any money, which I think is very important, right? And if your actual acres is actually lower than your target acres, that means that you're generating, your target profit margin and potentially more, right?
Yeah, and one thing I just want to add to this one is that this is your upfront cost to acquire that customer. And getting a customer to open their wallet the first time versus the second time, the third time, or the fourth time, it's much more expensive. So if you're selling a product that maybe is recurring or that you can upsell the customer later on, right, or you get them into your funnel and you get them familiar with your brand, you may be okay with actually spending 30% of your break-even ACoS to acquire that customer because you know that they're going to come back for whatever, the second purchase, the third purchase, or the fourth purchase.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think, those numbers here are just as an example. I think it really depends on, what's the status of this product? How good is the product? Do you have any other products that you can cross sell? So it's really, it depends on a lot of factors. But I think so in terms of, just to get the idea, and, to clarify that it's just really important to know your break-even ACoS and to know your target ACoS. Because if you don't know those two numbers, you're essentially, you're blind. You're just poking around a little without even knowing if you're profitable or not.
I'm sure there's no Amazon sellers that are operating blind today.
Well, I hope so.
All right, so actually, this is the campaign that we took from what I'm doing on the campaign for Crucial. So we have the catch-all auto campaign at the top, which is just the automatic campaign, and then we break them down into categories, and then we split them up with product types inside with different ad groups within, and we'll have both a combination of manual and auto set up. So to complement a campaign, we'll have auto and manual operating at the same time.
Okay, so that's interesting. So you use the ad groups so you create an ad group for the different products. Then is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
So we'll have the type of product, and we break it down based on brand, model, and type. So we just make, first of all, there's a great level of accountability, but also this is the way that we found that we've created campaigns that are optimally structured.
Okay.
And we also do it for organization as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I always say that there are a million ways how you can structure your campaigns, and none of those are perfect. Again, I think it depends on largely your selection. If you have a huge number of ASINs, then it makes sense to kind of have a more aggregated thing. I think this is the structure that we typically suggest, where you create one auto campaign and one manual campaign. For each individual ASIN, right? So one ASIN gets one auto campaign and one manual campaign. And within this manual campaign, you would create two ad groups. So one for broad keywords and another one for exact keywords, right? Mm-hmm. Typically, I don't recommend using phrase. I mean, you can for sure. The thing is that just this just adds another layer of complexity, right? Because instead of having two ad groups, you have three now. And we found that the difference between broad and phrase are actually very small in terms of results. So you don't get significant differences in those two ad groups. So our perspective is in order to keep it simple, we suggest to leave phrase out of it and just focus on exact and broad.
Okay. And just real quick, people were mentioning about auto. So auto campaigns, Amazon's actually pulling out of your own listing to come up with the valid keywords that you should be advertising against. So they'll pull it from your title, from your featured bullet points, from your description, and it's taking all of that to come up with what the keywords are. The only thing you can do is you can add in your negative keywords that you don't want to advertise against for that auto campaign.
Yeah, so I mean, auto campaigns is kind of the autopilot, right? You just choose a product, set a budget, and then Amazon takes care of everything. It has pros because it's very little effort. It has some cons, obviously, because you cannot set different bids for different keywords, and you also I mean that's the biggest difference, and you also cannot choose the keywords that you want to bid for, right? Mm-hmm. So this is why I guess you and I we both suggest that you take an auto and a manual campaign, because then you combine best of both worlds, right? So that's kind of the goal of the structure here.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I structured my campaign the way we've done it is we want to get extremely surgical and very, very focused on certain keywords and certain products. So I used to pay somebody a lot of money to manage my ad campaigns, and they did it the lazy man's way, right? They just had everything on autopilot. We were advertising just based on vacuum cleaner filters. Yeah. And I was spending anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 a month to make that happen. And so finally, when we started digging in and understanding that they actually just weren't putting in the legwork to create segmented campaigns that were highly targeted, I was like, okay, this is over. And he's like, well, you don't pay me enough to do that. And I was like, are you kidding? We've been working together for 1.5 years. Perhaps actually you should have been doing this as a continual work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, that's awful. I mean, getting $3,000 or $5,000 just for running auto campaigns. I mean, that's
great.
that's a ripoff, man. But just let me ask you one more question. So how do you handle match types then? Like, do you put different keywords and different match types in the same ad group then? So you have one ad group with per product, and then you just put the keywords in there. Like, how do you handle the match types then?
So we have the broad campaign, which is air purifier, and in there we have brands, and within that we're focused on our bid strategies. So we break it down to individual ad groups.
Okay, got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Interesting.
Okay. So where were we? Okay.
Yeah, so this is just a best practice for setting up the campaign. So those are all the things that you get asked for when you create a new campaign. So the first thing they will ask you is the daily budget. So typically, I just pick any number that you feel comfortable. I think $15 is okay to get started. You can even go higher. I think that the budget in general shouldn't play any significant role, because essentially, if you do have a profitable campaign, you don't want to run out of budget, right? And if you do not have a profitable campaign, you want to change this as quickly as possible, and again, not hit the budget, right? So the budget for me is really just an airbag. If everything goes wrong, or if a competitor is clicking on your ad all the time, this is the kind of stuff where you would need the budget to just limit the damage. But in the regular course of business, I feel that you shouldn't need a budget, and you should never really hit the budget, right? So that's my perception of this. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think it's the budget is just a placeholder. You said it's an airbag. It's the same thing. It's a placeholder where you can start seeing what kind of traction you're getting and making sure you're not being wasteful with the budget. But once you start getting in the weeds of your campaign, you'll start seeing, okay, maybe we should, obviously we're having a great return on our investment here. Let's increase the amount that we're spending so we can have more sell-through. Yeah. So again, I think the budget at the beginning, people feel a little bit uncomfortable when they need to put a budget. So I would just, pick any number. There's not too much harm you can do there. In terms of naming, I think, it's such a basic tip, but it's super, super important to just have a consistent way of naming your campaigns, because once you start of having 20 different ways how you give the campaign names, then you're just lost at some point. You have 50, 100, 200 campaigns, they're all named differently. You won't find your way around. It's just a huge nightmare. So I always suggest to add at least whether it's manual or an auto campaign, and also add kind of the exact. So if you use my kind of campaign structure, where you just add exact or broad or whatever it is to campaign name. And what you also can do is just if you put one product into the campaign or the ad group, then just add the name of the product also. But so I think the most important point is that you have a consistent structure, and then whatever the structure is, then that's up to you. But I think it's super important to just have a very consistent structure. Agreed. Yeah, organization is key. Like, we have 3,000 listings across 20 different marketplaces. So organization is one of the most key things of when you're first starting out, because you're going to start scaling your ASINs as well on Amazon. And especially as you start seeing traction, you're going to start adding in more ad groups. You're going to do more testing. So make sure you actually develop the proper naming conventions up front.
Wow. 3,000 ASINs across different marketplaces. Yeah, that's a lot of work, man.
It's a lot of work.
Okay, cool. Then so for for keywords, so this is your tip, I guess.
Yeah. So essentially, you can come up with broad keywords, phrase, exact. I love having exact match personally, just because it's very, very surgical and very, very focused. One of the ways we were coming up with our keywords was we were using the search term reports in Amazon Seller Central. Of course, using Sellics. Sellics is automatically importing those keywords found on Amazon. So if people aren't using Sellics, they can find it on Seller Central. If you go to Seller Central, then reports, then advertising reports, and the search term reports. However, now we actually have Sellics pulling it into the system to immediately give us access to those keywords. So that's one great way to get keywords. Another way that I get keywords is just looking at the negative reviews and seeing what people are writing and how they describe products. And then thirdly, I'm using Amazon's A9 at the top, and I'm just coming up with starting to type in, and they have auto-populating coming up on Amazon A9. And so I starting to see what people are typing in and what's being searched, and it helps give me feedback to figure out what keywords I want to nail.
Okay, so and so the search term report, you mean mostly from the auto campaign, then, right?
Yeah.
So you go into auto campaign, you get the best performing search term, and it's what's the criteria? Like, when does a search term need to hit specific KPIs in terms of have an ACoS of a certain limit, or get at least a certain number of impressions or so before you actually take it as a keyword in your manual campaign? Or do you just look for whether it makes sense to have this keyword for this product, and then you just take it?
So in the search term report, this is the first time that Amazon's giving you access to this kind of data to say this person searched this, and these are the people that bought it, and these are the people that viewed it. So we're constantly seeing like what are the highest impression keywords, but perhaps we'll sort the next column and say, okay, these are the highest impression. These are all ones that aren't converting. That maybe gives me an opportunity to say, okay, let's actually check out our listing. Maybe our listing's garbage, because you can drive people to a listing. It doesn't mean they're going to convert. So that's the first step I do. Then you can also take that same search term report and you can actually sort it in ascending, and you can see what are the items that are actually converting the best for my business right now. Maybe we want to double down on those items.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so you really are, you're very KPI driven then. So you look at the KPIs first, and then you look at whether there's actually whether it makes sense with the keyword, right, for the product.
But I focus a lot of my time looking at even the business reports on Seller Central, and in the business reports, I think it's parent by description business report, where it'll tell you your actual unit percentages. Essentially, it's almost like your conversion rate on Amazon. And so we're starting to, before you even start spending a lot of money on ads, I want to make sure that we and our sellers and the people that I'm consulting are also building best-in-class listings that are built to sell upfront.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. I think the interesting point is, using the PPC data to then again go back to your listing and then re-optimize your listing. So you have a certain set of assumption. You create an optimized listing as good as much as you can, and then you start running PPC, and then either the PPC results are confirming your hypothesis, or maybe you just find out that it's a completely different audience that is using your product.
And what's your take on match type, broad, phrase, exact? People get confused and they don't know which one to use. I'm a big believer in exact, but how about yourself? What are you seeing on your end?
So I'd say I'm pretty much on the same page as you are. I think exact is the best you can have, because it's super precise, right? There's no waste. Now the thing with exact is that if you only use exact, that means that you probably have hundreds, not even, maybe even thousands of keywords, and that just makes it quite labor intensive to handle all of those keywords, right? So typically what I do is I suggest a combination of exact and broad, right? So the advantage of broad is that you will find new keywords that you otherwise wouldn't find if you use exact. The advantage of exact is that you can make very precise bids. So you can theoretically bid the highest on exact, right? So again, I think the art is to combine the advantages of both, right? So use broad to find new keywords, and then if you find some new keywords and some new search terms, you can just put them into exact, and then have a very precise bid on once the keyword is on exact, right? So again, the great advantage that we have on Sellics is that we have a lot of data. So we did a test and we compared broad and phrase, and like I said before, we found that the difference between broad and phrase is only very small, right? So I know people who say use all three kinds of match types. I think it makes it very complex, and the advantage is very, very small compared to just using broad and exact.
Takeaway here is choose two. I mean, I was on the phone with a company last week, and they make refurbished computers. They have about 30,000 listings on Amazon. And they were advertising broad keywords that weren't exact, that weren't phrase. And so if you're just advertising based on desktop computers, right, you're not getting surgical, and you're gonna have a super high ACoS, because maybe people don't want a Dell, or maybe people don't want a refurbished item. So I would get very, very specific here with what you want to get out of your match type that you choose.
Yeah, so Sonar is another way to research new keywords. So as a disclaimer, Sonar is made by us, by Sellics. Now, the reason I promoted, I don't want to make this promotional, this entire webinar, but Sonar is entirely free. So I feel very comfortable of sharing it. I think you get a great value out of this. So it's a database with over 100 million Amazon keywords. Those are all real Amazon search queries. You also have a search volume indication, and you also have a reverse ASIN lookup. So you can enter an ASIN, and it will give you all the keywords that this product is ranking for. And all of this is free. So there are no restrictions. There's no paid version and a free version. There's just a free version, and you can get all the value that I just mentioned out of Sonar.
Awesome. So will it give you other ideas of keywords that are high volume that you should be advertising against?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can. I think the advantage, and I know the autocomplete that you mentioned also, we just enter the keyword in the search bar, and then it will give you some extensions. I think the disadvantage there is that you don't get any synonyms, right? You always get the word plus something, right? Mm-hmm. And so the great thing about Sonar is that actually, you also get synonyms, and this way you find entirely new keywords that otherwise, maybe you wouldn't have thought of, right? So, I would just want to mention Sonar. So it's sonar-tool.com. Feel free to use it. It's free.
Awesome.
So yeah, this is just a screenshot of Sonar, right? So it's very easy. You just enter the keyword, you hit go, and then it will give you a long list of keywords, and then you can download it. So here, I did it for air purifier because I know this is your example. So you can see, I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but you get 22,000 results for air purifier. So that's a lot of keywords.
And is this only pulling from Amazon's API, or are you also pulling Google as well?
No, it's just Amazon. So, we find it's very important because, I know there are a lot of keyword tools out there that, use both, right? They use Google plus Amazon or so. I think that this is really misleading, right? Because the way people search is just different on Amazon than it is on Google. So, I think if you can avoid it, you should try to focus on Amazon keywords only.
Got it. I mean, I kind of like to use, I use Moz, M-O-Z, keyword planner, just to come up. I just like to see what Google searchers are searching. And so, because if everyone's just going after Amazon keywords, and sometimes you'll find long tail keywords that are very valuable that aren't part of Amazon's database. And so I like to use M-O-Z, and they have you can use it twice a day for free. It's called the keyword planner tool. I think it's another way to find more keywords.
Yeah. So, there's no harm in doing it. I think as long as you're aware that the way that people search on Google is different than the way that people search on Amazon, it's certainly a great source of inspiration. And I know Moz is probably the most powerful tool for this, right?
Yeah, for Google at least.
Yeah.
All right. So how to structure your PPC campaign. This is all just very basic of what you can put in. You could use Bid Plus, which will automatically raise your bid up to 50%. I use it all the time. It's just a great way to see what happens when you do hit Amazon's bottom or their minimum, or even when you hit the threshold of what the max bid the max competitor bid that you're hitting. Bid Plus is a great way to keep things going and keep volume going, as long as, of course, you're making sure you're managing what your target ACoS is or your break-even ACoS, like we discussed.
Yeah. So, what's interesting, I talked to some guys at Amazon, and so what they told me is that, the click-through rate at the top of the page is 5 times higher than at the bottom of the page, right? And so this is kind of, the power of Bid Plus is it takes you from the bottom of the page to the top of the page in certain situations. And so that multiplies your click-through rate by 5. So that's really significant. I was really surprised when I heard this number. I was like, what? Are you crazy? 5 times higher? But that's what they said. So it's, and that's from Amazon themselves, right? So it's, this is really, that was really interesting. The other thing that they said is, what would you expect? What do you think? How much of the clicks are actually happening on the search result page compared to the product detail page, right? What would you expect?
So the search result page versus the detail page. You're saying when you right below the buy box where there's other sellers that are selling?
Yeah, there are sponsored products on the listing as well, right? On the product detail page. So when you scroll down a bit, there 1 or 2 bars of just
okay. So I think that click through rate is I want to say 4 to 6%. How does that sound?
Yeah. Okay. No, I would no. I don't mean the click through rate. I mean the volume. So how much of all the sponsored product clicks are happening on the search result page compared to the listing page?
99% on the search page.
You see, that's what I was expecting as well. In fact, it's 50-50.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I was, I couldn't believe it. I was, I was asking again. Are you sure? Do you know what you just said? That means that half of the clicks are actually happening on search result page. And so he confirmed that this is actually the way it is right now. So that's, that was very surprising. Kind of the drawback of this is that, for a long time you couldn't retarget those ASINs. It's unclear whether you can do it today. But I think it's, this is just one of the reasons why running automatic campaigns is just super powerful, because, this is the way how you go onto the listing page.
Mm-hmm. And I think we're still early days for Amazon sponsored ads. I think that they're going to start developing and adding, like, you'll be able to choose which page you want your listing to go on. If you want to be ranked number 1, 2, or 3, like, they have a long way to go to build this out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the biggest part that's missing right now is that you cannot target an audience, right? You have no insights about your audience. You cannot say, I want to bid 50 cents for a male customer and 20 cents for a female customer, because the product is typically bought by male, for instance, right? So, I mean, there are huge insights that, currently are not available to sellers.
So you think that Amazon's going to come out with something like a Facebook audience or a lookalike profile?
Yeah, I mean, at least that you can target more on interests or more demographics, or, purchase history, for instance, that, you can target, I think the baby category is very typical for this, right? So, because the baby, if you have a baby, you go through certain stages, right? So, a week before birth, you buy something, and then 2 weeks after you buy something else. And it's pretty much the same for most parents, that, the cycle. So if you know that, 3 weeks ago they bought a certain product, then you can target those people when they're back to buy your product then, right? So I think that, there's so much potential there. And we're not even touching the surface. We're not even touching it. So, I'm very curious and excited to see what's happening over the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. That's what I was talking about also, is like knowing your lifetime value of your client. If your client comes back to buy the second time or the third time, you don't have to pay for that. The A cost is spread around 3 different purchases.
Yeah, I mean, sure. So, by the way, I see there are a lot of questions coming in the chat. Shall we just wait for the end for the questions, or?
We'll compile the questions in the end. I mean, hopefully we'll get to everyone's questions. I want this to be interactive, and so I think there's just people asking. Let's see the most recent one. The stat Franz said, it's 50-50, so 50% are search on the main search page versus on the detail page itself doing sponsored ads. You said the click-through rate is 50-50 right now, right?
No, so this is the number of clicks that you get, right? Yeah. So the click-through rate was 5-1 on the top of the search result page versus the end of the search result page, right? But in terms of sheer volume, how many clicks do you get on which page? You get 50% of your sponsored products clicks are happening on the search result page, and 50% are happening on the listing page, right?
I'm shocked by that stat.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I almost fell off the chair when I heard this number,
So this is just when you first create your campaign, Amazon's going to ask you for your bid. If you want to go after the lowest competitor bid or the highest competitor bid, and where to come in. So this is where you can just allocate what your bid is. Just very basic. Is there something you want to add to that, Franz?
No. I mean, generally, what do you suggest? Like, should people just follow the suggested bid, or what,
So that's an interesting question. So for me, I'll just tell you what we do at my company. So like for me, I want to get traction on a listing right away when we launch it. Mm-hmm. So typically I want to go after the highest bid, and I want to see how it does. I want to see what my conversion rates are going to be like, what the impressions are going to be like. I want to see if maybe there's some change I need to make to my listing. So we'll get very surgical on it. I have a whole team that does this in-house, but I like to go after highest competitor bid. And also, I mean, right now we're in a very, very competitive environment on Amazon.
Yes.
Unlike any other year that I've been involved in Amazon, I mean, I can go to a cocktail party and my friends are talking about selling on Amazon now. Like that's how spread out selling on Amazon has gotten. So for me, like most people, when they first start on Amazon, like they're operating maybe out of their house or out of their garage, or so it's gotten very, very competitive. And I want to make things very expensive for my competitors, like anybody else, right? And I want to make sure that my product is getting seen and getting the traction and reviews necessary, because otherwise my cash flow is tied up in that product.
Yeah, well, okay, interesting. I didn't know it was so popular.
In the US, it is.
Yeah, crazy.
Like, people's grandmothers are selling on Amazon.
It's a new national sport, huh?
Exactly, it is like a sport. So it looks like there's a question for you coming from Alex. Do you see that in the question box?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a very Sellics specific questions. I mean, maybe we can just just go to a question at the end. I think that's
okay, cool. And we're around. You can email either of us. We'll have our contact details at the end here. So we have a lot to cover.
Yeah. Let's just move. Oh yeah, great.
Okay. So bid optimization. For me, we like to actually wait 1 to 2 weeks after we make a change just to see how our changes are doing. So we don't want to rush anything. And there's always going to be a 24 to 48 hour lag with analytics. That's just what we've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, there are weird things happening, So what we saw is when we set up the API, at some point, for one campaign, we got negative impressions back from Amazon, right? So that's a bit confusing, because what the hell are negative impressions, right? So typically what we see is that the numbers. So first of all, there's a delay in the attribution. So if you click on Monday, but the sales happens on Sunday, it's still attributed to the click on Monday, right? So by default, you have a 7-day attribution window. So all the sales are happening within 7 days after the click are attributed to this one click. So in any case, I think it makes just sense to wait for 7 days to pass before you look into the data, because on the first day, it always looks awful. The ACoS is always, very, very high, but it's because, the purchase often happens on day 3, 4 or so, right? So I totally agree with, if you say wait a minimum of 1 to 2 weeks, I think, 7 days is the minimum, is a good number.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the other things that we look at is the first thing we look at, if you look at the arrows on the left, we first look at impressions to clicks. We want to see what that share is, that ratio is. And then we'll go look into what we've spent to what orders have come in and the sales that we've gotten. So that's just the progression of what we look at when we're analyzing our what we're bidding and what we're spending and what's happening in our campaign. We'll first start off looking at just impressions itself, the sheer volume of impressions. We'll look at those clicks versus the impressions, and then how much we're spending to get those orders. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, I think the importance of the KPIs changes over the course of the product. So, at the beginning, when you mainly, your main goal is to find out what are the relevant keywords, you would probably look more for impressions than for anything else, right? But as the product matures, and you focus more on profit, maybe, then you would switch to ACoS.
Yep, completely agree.
Okay, so here's a thing, again, a kind of a calculation of the default bid, because most of the people, they struggle to find the first bid. When you set up your campaign, Amazon will ask you what's the default bid. And so, the way that I suggested is to use the following approach. So again, we have a product, let's say that the product sells for $100. We have the Amazon fee, cost of goods, overhead. We have a profit before ad spend of $30, right? And again, so now we determine the target profit that we want to achieve after ad spend. So in this case, let's just assume that we want to keep a $20 profit out of this product that we sell for $100. That means that we have a PPC investment that we can make of $10, right? Because that's essentially what we can invest. And so now the trick now is to multiply this with your organic conversion rate of that product. Okay, because if you do this, then essentially you get the number, the maximum CPC that you're willing to pay in order to hit that number, right? So the assumption here is that, assuming that your product is having the same conversion rate on ads than it has organically, then this is the maximum amount you can spend on one click, right? I mean, that makes sense, I guess, right? If you have a $10 investment and you have 5% conversion rate, that means that you do 20 clicks. So 20 clicks times times 5, 50 cents means $10, right? So this is really, I think this is a great way to just get started at the beginning. The assumption here being that PPC conversion rate is going to be the same as organic conversion rate, right? And so this is a good, I believe this is a fair assumption to make at the beginning. And then once the campaign is running, obviously we'll start adjusting the bids and seeing if this actually holds true, this assumption. Okay, and then here again, so what's important to understand is that what we just did is we calculated the target CPC, right? So this is what we're actually willing to pay for each click. Now, again, what we did is we looked at the difference between CPCs and bids, because CPC is what you're paying, whereas CPC is what you're bidding. And so what we found is that, on average, the bid is 40 to 50% higher than the CPC. That means that, if you calculate that if your max CPC is 50 cents, that means that you can actually bid 70, 75 cents to hit the CPC, right? So I think this, again, is based on the huge analysis that we did, is a good, rule of thumb. So you calculate what are you actually willing to pay, and then you just add another 50% to actually come to the number that you're willing to.
Do you think this is also part of Amazon's ploy to get people just to bid higher for keywords?
It's always hard to say what's the rationale behind. I think generally, there are two types of people. So some people say that, Amazon will do whatever it takes, or whatever they can do to get the most money out of it. Sure. So those people would certainly argue for it. And then other people, they find some other ways to explain things. So they say, Amazon is always focused on the customer, on the end consumer. And so if it's good for the end consumer, then they're going to do it. I personally, I think, I think Amazon certainly has a huge interest in keeping those bids high, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So yeah, and then obviously, so once you've set the target bid, or the default bid, the question is, how do you adjust bids on an ongoing basis? And so here, I just want to go into some theory here. So this is typically how the ACOS develops, right? You start bidding very low, your ACOS is very low, and then as you start increasing your bid, the ACOS will just increase, right? Mm-hmm. So essentially, it's very simple. You just, at the beginning, like we said, I think on the first slide or so, you determine your target ACOS, which in this case is, let's say, 20%, right? And then, so this is where you want to get to. And then when you start bidding, right, you have your default bid, which I think is 60% in this example. So if you could just click on the next slide. Yeah, so in this case, your starting bid that you calculated is 60%, which then leads to an ACOS of 30%. So the only thing that you need to do, you start bidding, and then you just compare your bid with your target ACOS, and you move your bid around. I think what's important is that you don't do significant steps, right? So I suggest you take incremental steps of maybe 30% changes in the bid, because if you go to, let's say, from 5 cents to $2, then you're kind of jumping the entire line in between, and you will only know how it performs with a very high and a very low bid, but you don't know the steps in between. So I think that a gradual adjustment of, let's say, 30% steps or so is the most useful you can do.
And if you're making a change, just make sure to wait I like to wait 14 days. Just make sure you give some time for the data to populate. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think. So most people, what they want to do, they would like to have a specific time frame of, say, look at your data every 14 days. I think, at least from a theoretical point of view, it makes sense to say, wait for a certain number of clicks or wait for a certain number of impressions, and then again go into it. But this is fairly detailed stuff, right?
Hey, I like it. So this slide here is just about the different ways that you could be advertising on Amazon. There were some questions early on. I suggest, AMS, Amazon Marketing Services, a lot of sellers actually don't know much about it. And so AMS was traditionally provided to vendors that were selling through the 1P first-party platform, Vendor Central on Amazon. So we leverage product display and headline search from AMS, but we don't do sponsored ads through AMS. Why? Is because the reporting and the data is hard to decipher and sift through, because they only will show you, since you've been on AMS, what the results are. So we use sponsored ads on Seller Central. Headline search is available through AMS, and now beta testing in Seller Central right now as well. But headline search, like I said, it's at the top, the banner at the top. You need to have a grouping of products along with product display are great places to put your money. They're not very competitive. Typically, on average, what I've seen is that roughly 20% of your sponsored ad spend should be spent on headline search.
That's interesting. Okay. Is that so? Do you see that this works for for all types of products, or do you see differences in the product categories?
I mean, you need to have grouping. So you need to have groupings of products. So if you're selling, I don't know, USB mice, and you have different varieties, you may want to group those together in a headline ad. It just depends on what you're selling. If you're selling bobblehead toys, same thing. You just want to have different bobblehead toys at the top of the headline search ad. The other thing I think that a lot of people haven't done is creating their store page. I don't know if a lot of sellers on this call have done that, but they have store pages. They have that on Amazon as a seller and through Amazon AMS. It's a great way to just bring people to your page. And there's also, the Amazon allows you to have social media presences. So you can have your Facebook handle, your Twitter handle, and Instagram handle.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that new that you can integrate your Facebook stuff and your social media handles?
It's just a store page. So the store page is just giving your store a presence.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Now, for Vendor Central, a lot of people maybe don't have access to AMS for headline and product display. You could actually apply to Vendor Central Express, from what I understand, and also get the headline search and product display through that.
Yeah, that's the trick, right? That's the trick that most advanced sellers have been doing over the past few weeks and months, is to just apply for Vendor Central Express to then just get access to AMS. As you said last week also already, I think it's just a question of a few weeks, maybe months, until headline searches and also product display ads will be made available to sellers. But until that point, for sure, you do have a huge competitive advantage if you have access to AMS, whereas your competitors don't. So it's really
the whole idea of this whole presentation is, how do you win if you're doing what everyone else is doing, right? If everyone's doing the same thing, you're never going to get ahead on Amazon.
Yeah, it's well, yeah, it's a question though. But yes, AMS.
Let's say someone asks, how do you get access to the beta version of headline search? You have to be invited, or again, try it through Vendor Central, see if you can get actual access. And then in terms of what I believe headline search should be as a percentage of your total spend using sponsored products, I believe it should be about 15 to 20%. Expect to budget that on headline search. So here's an example of headline search at the top. There's an example of the product display in the right below the buy box on the right-hand corner. All very valuable real estate spaces on Amazon, and really can give you a ton of exposure. And again, a lot of sellers aren't actually utilizing this today.
Yeah, I think it's a bit more complicated to create to build the creatives, right, for the product display ads. It's
a little more complicated, but like anything else, things are complicated and you get over it. So the other thing I want to just point out is that the incentive review abolishment that happened last year, where people were essentially creating artificial conversions and getting their products boosted through essentially discounting products for reviews and getting it pushed up the Amazon A9 algorithm, those days are gone. So essentially now we're in a pay-to-play environment on Amazon sponsored ads where you need to pay to play. But with that becomes this circuit of, okay, now you've got more traction, more people are buying, right? Amazon's taking notice. You get pushed up the organic algorithm as well. So PPC, rising tide lifts all boats. So PPC will help lift your organic position and increase your best-selling rank with more reviews, more purchases, but also being able to have more engagement on page.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's right now this kind of it's become the alternative to incentivized reviews. So in the first 2-3 years it's been incentivized reviews, and now it's sponsored products.
Now somebody else just commented earlier on the early reviewer program. So I posted on the early reviewer program the day it came out, and it was through a LinkedIn post. And so what I did was I just took a screenshot of what you can do. Essentially, Amazon charges you, I think it's $50 per SKU. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
$60 per SKU, and they'll guarantee up to about 5 reviews on a listing. And it's the legal
guarantee
way.
5 reviews? Really?
Well,
It's guaranteed?
Well, they guarantee they're working on your behalf to get you the reviews. You pay either way. I don't have any results yet, but we did it the same day, and all those the spreadsheet we uploaded, I think, our first 10 products, and we haven't seen traction yet. But I'm going to keep everyone posted on that. But it's essentially it's a legal way to get reviews and traction on a product.
Yeah. Let's see how this works. I think what Amazon needs to do is they need to communicate it in a more better way, to the end consumer, because the end consumer still doesn't know that he can get access to those discounts. So.
Yep. So this is so I first started selling out on Amazon in 2008, when there was just referral fees. There was no question of FBA or early reviewer program or sponsored ads. And so the game on Amazon, like I mentioned earlier, like we're in the only strong will survive environment in 2017. So a perfect client to somebody on Amazon is someone that's doing sponsored ads, someone that's doing the early reviewer program, someone that gets their products on FBA. So Amazon's making money across anywhere they can. Every touch point of the customer's buying journey, that's where Amazon's at. So here's what I think is happening is that there's other ways. So Amazon's getting crowded. There's over 2 million sellers on Amazon. In fact, Amazon's having an Amazon Boost event in the city where we're hosting a VIP reception afterwards, where we have hundreds of sellers going to this event in New York City. So now, since it's getting so crowded to sell on Amazon today, where do you go? And so a lot of the marketplaces are still at the nascent early stages that Amazon was at in 2008. They're less crowded, right? And there's not as many fees that are pay-to-play fees that need to happen. So my second biggest channel is my own shopping cart, which I built on Shopify. But on top of that, you have new marketplace players coming into the mix, like Walmart and Jet, where they don't have sponsored product ads, right? There's not 2 million sellers on those platforms. And you only have to pay that initial referral fee, because they literally duplicated the Amazon referral fees on their own platform. So you only have the 15%, and it's ripe for the taking right now. So go after low-hanging fruit. And of course, Skubana supports all those different marketplaces. So the idea is you want to diversify as much as you can.
Yeah, interesting thought. So for me, the main question is, what's, is the growth that's happening on Amazon also in terms of sales, is this more attractive than going to some other channels? And, I think, there are arguments for both, but it's certainly a point to leave.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
The thing is that Amazon cares about what you make. They don't care about what you keep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big dilemma, is that you can get traction on Amazon, right? My grandmother can get traction on Amazon, but that doesn't mean actually that I'm making money or she's making money on Amazon. That's
true. That's certainly true. I think that is a very important point. We see so many sellers. In Sellics, we have this profit calculator, right? So we automatically calculate how much money is actually left at the end of after deducting all those fees that you're mentioning. And so, sometimes we get calls by people that say like, hey guys, there must be a bug there because it says I have a negative margin, but then in fact, it's not a negative margin, but it's really just, that, you're spending too much on PPC or whatever.
Right. It's like you're not making money.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So in Skubana, we have it not just for Amazon, but we have it for all channels. We call it SKU profitability. So you can see across every SKU you sell, across every channel, where you're making money and where you're losing money, but not just for your pick fee and your pack fee and your storage fee and your return fee. We also we're pulling in every single fee. And if you're doing merchant fulfilled, right, we'll pull in the shipping costs that you actually are selling it for, and you're printing shipping labels on Skubana and get as surgical as that shipping cost to figure out what your profitability is across every single channel. So it's a pretty awesome report that we generate.
Super powerful, man.
Fee. Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Is that by SKU or like how does it work?
So the first is listing profitability. So that's by channel. So you have every SKU by channel, and at the top you'll see your net profit and you'll see your unit margin across the entire channel for that date range. And then if you click on the SKU, you'll see every order that contributes to that negative or positive profitability. And then you sort of peel that onion back one more time, And now you can see your SKU profitability across every channel.
Wow.
And then it's literally, you can see what channel is contributing to that SKU's profitability or lack thereof with every single fee included in it. It's pretty amazing.
It is. And it's all automated?
All automated. It's all about automation.
That is very powerful. Yeah. So for Sellics, again, so I don't want to make an ad show out of this, but Sellics has a very, very powerful ad management software. So Chad is using it as well, and I guess for some of your customers, you're using it as well. So it just simplifies the entire PPC management significantly. It's integrated with your Seller Central, so all the data gets pulled automatically from Seller Central, and now you can even modify the data here in Sellics, right? So if you want to change your bids or change keywords or whatever it is, you can do it directly in Sellics, and it will be pushed back into Seller Central. So essentially, the pitch that I give is there's no need to log into Seller Central anymore to manage your sponsored products campaigns, and I think that's a big relief for a lot of sellers.
It is a big relief. And I wouldn't be joining this call with you unless I was a big believer in the software. We're using it internally. And actually, we started outsourcing our sponsored ads to an agency, homerev.com. So feel free to check them out and let them know I sent you over there. So they're using Sellics to manage it all and put it all together.
Nice, cool. That's great.
For me, for those that actually made it to the end of the presentation, I had mentioned an offer. So I will be happy to do a free 15-minute PPC consultation with you to understand what's happening in your PPC accounts. All you have to do is go and apply skubana.com/gold. The password is nuggets. As you guys know, I love gold nuggets and I love adding value and helping other people in their businesses. That's why we put together these webinars. That's why we have Franz on, because we're all about making sure that you took an hour out of your day, maybe even more than that, to join us. And we're excited to sort of reciprocate. So with that said, go ahead, Franz.
Yes, many questions coming here.
A lot of questions coming. So we won't be able to get to all of them. Looks like there's a nice good banter going on in the chat. Let me see.
So there's some question about Walmart. That's actually also very interesting for me. So what's the potential on Walmart?
So Walmart is the 4th biggest internet property in the United States. I don't know what it is in Germany, but Walmart in the United States is number 4. And so they advertise really heavy right now on Google for product listing ads. And you don't need to pay to get shown and be seen. Whereas on Amazon just started doing product listing ads on google.com, I think late last year. The only way they were able to monetize that was they were taking the fees charged for sponsored ads to allow them to advertise your product on Google. So I believe that Walmart is the next large marketplace that you should be going after. It's the 3rd biggest marketplace for me. Actually, 2nd biggest marketplace, but 3rd biggest channel, because my 2nd biggest channel is my own website.
Okay, well, so you really see that Walmart is the competitor for Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, they have a long way to go. Like I said in that previous example, at Walmart, Amazon today, or Amazon in 2008 is the Walmart of today. And so when I started on Amazon, there wasn't nearly as many competitors. Margins were high. The birds were chirping, right? Bob Marley was playing in the background. It was great. but things have changed. And so it's important that people recognize when there's opportunity and be the first to actually execute on that change. And I think that's one way of being successful in e-commerce, because what you knew 6 months ago on Amazon expires, right? Every 6 months it expires and you have to reteach yourself and relearn things. And Walmart is this new nascent player in the space that you can make a lot of money on as long as you play your cards right and get there first. So Frank says Walmart sucks for sellers. Maybe it's because of what you're selling. It's a great marketplace for me. So I'm sure others on this have had the same experience.
Yeah, so I don't have any insights there because we're focused on Amazon explicitly, yeah. But it's certainly, I think if there's anyone who can actually compete with Amazon in the long run, I think it's going to be Walmart. That's my perception.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Another question came in: does Sellics integrate with Vendor Central?
Yeah. So we do have a version specifically for vendors, which is a completely new software. Actually, it's not released yet, but it is already live. So whoever asked this question, just feel free to send me an email, and I will give you access to our brand new vendor software. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. Is it just for advertising on vendors, or?
It's for advertising, but also for other stuff like reviews and keyword optimization and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of we kind of duplicated Sellics, but just for vendors in some way. So it's because we felt that the demand from the vendors are increasing. So we just released the vendor tool.
Cool.
Okay, so let's see. Wow, so many questions.
So someone said you can't MCF any order to Walmart. That is correct. Amazon changed their policies, and now you essentially have to ship in an Amazon box. It can no longer be a blind ship. So essentially, Walmart doesn't allow you to actually do multi-channel fulfillment in their terms of service.
So I'm just going through the questions to see.
I think at the end of the day, anybody on this call today can actually email. They can email myself if they have a question. It's chad@skubana.com. Franz, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email. It's fj@sellics.com. fj@sellics.com.
Awesome.
So there are questions here. For instance, Kenny was asking, how long do you run auto campaigns?
For me or for you?
For I guess for the two of us, right?
Well, what are you seeing on your side?
Well, I think that you just keep them running. I think so. Ideally, you start with auto campaigns at the beginning. That will find those campaigns that will find a lot of keywords for you, new keywords. You start taking the best keywords out and put them into a manual campaigns. And the more you do this, the more you will see that actually in the auto campaign you will only have ASINs showing up. And ASINs essentially means that the ad is getting displayed on the product detail page, on the listing page of this particular ASIN. So at some point, 95% of your search terms in your auto campaigns will actually be ASINs. And I think that's actually a good sign, because that means that you've really taken everything out of your auto campaign. But then you should still keep it running, because it's just a good way to show up on your competitor's listing.
Yep, I completely agree. Keep it running. The other question I had for you, I think that was also someone asked, was international sponsored ads.
Yeah, I mean, so it works. The good thing is that it works, across all countries, and the system is 100% the same. In fact, even the interface is in English. So if you're selling on the European marketplace in Spain, for instance, you can still run your ads the same way than you would do it in the US. So it's just a one-on-one. It's 100% the same. So I think it's very easy. Now, if you think about competitiveness, obviously the European marketplace is a lot less competitive than the US marketplace, and that's something that we see every day. It's the opportunity here is significant in Europe. I know that a lot of sellers, they're kind of scared for for taxes, for logistics, for translation, all this kind of stuff. But in terms of PPC, it's super attractive.
All right, what else here? I would use Amazon. So someone was saying, Frank was saying Sellics versus Skubana. No, we're very, very different. Sellics is everything before the checkout, and Skubana is operationally everything after the checkout. Let's see what else. Somebody wrote here, would you recommend switching investment from Google AdWords to Amazon for a better return on investment? So it really depends on your category, Stephen. Right now, Amazon is advertising really heavy on Google, so you may actually be cannibalizing your own spend if you're only an Amazon seller. Now, if you're trying to actually own the customer at the end of the day, the only way you can do that is actually to have your own shopping cart and advertise. So it might be that you'll be willing to spend more to get a client because you get their email address and you can remarket to them. That's what I was talking about earlier, which is the lifetime value of your client. You should really consider the 2-time, 3-time, 4-time purchases and make sure you do things to make sure they come back and buy from you, whether it's on Amazon or if you have your own website that you're advertising on Google, making sure you bring them into a nurturing funnel and a campaign that actually dips into their wallet and grabs more dollars out of it.
Yeah, so I mean, you're the expert in this, right? So I would just follow what you say. There was another question asking for the bids. There was Sean asking, what do you suggest when people are already bidding $6 to $8 a click? There is no way these people are breaking even. You would have to have a conversion rate of 75% or higher to break even with crazy bids like that. So what do you do if there's a keyword with $6 to $8 bid per click?
So first of all, I would go look at what you're buying it for, because maybe you just actually bought, you just didn't buy it at the correct price. Secondly, depends on how many SKUs you have. Like, are you dependent on this SKU to make money and put food on the table? Or is this a hero SKU that you need to have in your catalog, but it doesn't make you the most money at the end of the day? So it depends if I'm actually trying to be very aggressive and play hardball with a competing Chinese seller that's competing against my listing. It just depends. It really, really depends on your profit margins. If it's the only SKU that's in your catalog. I would also say that I love to actually do bundles and kits. It's something that we haven't talked about on this call. But doing kits and bundles allows you to increase the average order value of what you're selling and bundle it with other items together.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to just, increase the sales, and then essentially you can just spend more on ads. So generally, I think, spending $6 to $8 a click really depends on, what product you're selling. If you sell a $1,000 product, then, this might be fine. Generally, I think that $6 to $8 a click is super, super competitive. In general, if your competitors are crazy and they bid $10 a click, and they lose $9 then they lose $9 on it, I mean, you just can't compete. What do you want to do at the end of the day? I would say just try to find some other keywords. As we saw at the beginning, there's a huge amount of keywords where there's very little competition or no competition at all. So I think that, when it's just too competitive, and I do understand it's a problem when sellers are bidding $6 to $8 a click and they don't understand what they're doing, right? That this is certainly a problem, because it's just, it makes it impossible for you to compete. But, I wouldn't personally, it's up to you how much money you want to lose. And I think Chad had some very, very good points about, how relevant this product is. But I think in the long run, it's very hard to justify losing a lot of money on a product. It's just, you need to have a strategy.
All right, I think that's time. But guys, we really appreciate all the time you spent with us today. If you have questions, please feel free to follow up with us. I see people are already applying for the power offer for the PPC audit. Keep applying, guys, and I'll let you know if you do get in. Thank you, Franz, for helping me put this together.
Thank you, Chad. It was a pleasure to be on the call with you on the